Hello and welcome to Acquiring Access with Keisha Anderson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Keisha Anderson, and I am a student storyteller for the Faculty of Student Development. My pronouns are she and her, and this conversation is taking place on the Tecumlipse to Secwepemc territory within the unceded traditional lands of the Secwepemc Nation. So welcome to Acquiring Access. This is a live video series with the TRU Student Life. I'm really excited to introduce you to today's special guest, Jenn May, who is an accessibility experiential learning coordinator. And so I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, Jenn.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so I have lots of questions for you, as you know. And so I guess we'll just get started. Yeah. So my first question for you, Jenn, is can you please tell me a little bit about your role at TRU, like what it all entails and all that sort of
Sure.
stuff?
Yeah. Thank you for getting all of my title out. I have difficulty getting my own title out sometimes. So I'm the Accessibility Experiential Learning Coordinator in the Career and Experiential Learning Department. So my role is to support students who are transitioning from an academic environment to a career or experiential learning environment, and to support accessibility initiatives within the department. So students that maybe have a health condition or an injury or a disability, just looking at how in career we can better support students with that transition. We know that there's a gap in services in a lot of post-secondary institutions within this realm, and so I'm excited to have been able to be a part of the work over the last year and a half
That's
in CEL. Yeah.
that's super cool, and it's actually like I only just met you recently, and it's been a delight every time we've gotten to talk, which I guess this is our second time, or so continuing to be a delight. But I remember because I came to you just because I always find it really interesting learning about accessibility in employment and the workplace and stuff like that. And because we're talking about accessibility in this series, and you're one of the big people who is making that happen for us students on campus. Like I just thought it would be really great to interview you and like accessibility in the workplace is it's such a big thing, and sometimes, like, I know for myself, like, for those of you who don't know, I have a visual impairment, so this accessibility stuff is all very dear to my heart. um, and so in terms of accessible employment, like, sometimes we're so busy as students thinking about our studies that we lose track of, like, oh my goodness, the next step is like finding accessibility in employment and stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, and it's a really important topic, and so it's great that your series addressing that, and kind of featuring you know the university and what we can do to support students. I think one of the biggest issues for students transitioning into a career setting in terms of you know accessibility is the disclosure piece,
Mm.
and just feeling confident and comfortable enough to request accommodations or adaptations that they might need, because it's definitely it feels different when you're transitioning out of an academic environment where those supports are available into a place that's uncertain potentially, in terms of whether or not you'll get the support you need and how to ask for that support.
No, absolutely. And I hear you there about disclosure being such a nerve-wracking task for a lot of people because, you're concerned about how the employer is going to take that, or like how other employees, like your fellow colleagues, are going to deal with that. And so, yeah, I'm very interested further on in our discussion to kind of hear more about these sorts of things. And So yeah, I'm really glad.
Mhm.
Um, but I wanted to start by asking you this next question, which because like a lot of us, like it's easy to forget that staff and faculty were once students themselves, and like sometimes I know from a student perspective, like it can be intimidating to um, reach out to services sometimes because you're like, oh, I have to be a certain way or have to be a certain level of professional or this and that, but forgetting that these professionals who are helping us are human is the bottom line. So I just wanted to ask you a bit about what did you study in school and what were you like as a student?
Um, okay, so I studied social work in the BSW program at TRU. Um, and I did it over a number of years. I have a family and I needed to work often full time, and so I was juggling school and work at the same time, and so it did take me a little while to get there, but I finally did, and I'm really happy that was the path that I chose. I'm a registered social worker now as well, and in addition to it's the other hat that I wear, in addition to the accessibility experiential learning coordinator role. What was I like as a student? Well, I was a bit of a, I guess, an overachiever, but also my personal life is really important. So having opportunities to hang out, my friends and just spend time with my family was also really important to me. So I used to schedule my assignments around the fun stuff that I wanted to do. And that was what would drive me to complete my assignments, is that I knew that if I didn't get them completed, that I wouldn't have time to spend doing fun things with my friends. So that's the
That's a
kind of
great
student I
way.
was. So
Powerful method.
instead of planning my social life around my school life, I did it the other way around, and it really actually held me accountable to getting my work done, because it was important to my self-care that I have that time. So I would certainly, and this is not advice by any means, would cram a little bit. But as a person with ADHD, it's kind of a trait that some of us do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's I'm really like I'm grateful that you mentioned that as well because like sometimes we forget too that like other like the services like people who we reach out to may also like share lifestyles, or they may share like disabilities, or they may share like learning, like the way that they approach learning with us, like, and so I'm so excited that like we're getting to talk about this because and also I really as a person who is like seeking to find balance, I love that method that you're talking about that you used as a student of like trying to just planning your assignments that way. And like I know that everybody does everything differently, and everybody has unique ways to approach things. And but anyway, I just think that's super great. Um, yeah, and are you comfortable with me asking about your ADHD?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, because I'm interested to know like if that played a role in you going down the career path that you've gone with becoming like in the role that you're in right now with career education. Like because I don't know, I'm just making assumptions. I know nothing, but I as a person with a disability myself, like I know that it can be easier to relate to people and like sometimes in certain circumstances when you can be like, well, I'm in this boat as well. I don't know if that's the case, but yeah.
Um, it, it is a part of it now. When I first started in this field, I often say that my career found me. So I started with teaching type related courses in office administration at the time it was called DO BC, and it was a nonprofit organization that supported people with disabilities with employment. And so I started there, but what I quickly found out is that this was sort of a path that I wanted to go down. It was working with people and supporting their career aspirations was really important to me, especially with people who have barriers to employment. And as I went along that journey, I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD. And I actually didn't know for a really long time that that's what I had, and why, I could be really hyper focused on some things and then not be able to find my keys, my purse, my wallet, my phone, and feeling like not a good sense of direction. There was a lot of things that I didn't realize were symptoms of that, and that I lived with for a very long time. So I only first disclosed that I have that since I've worked in career and experiential learning, because I really, earlier when I talked about disclosure, I never really wanted people to know, because people make a lot of assumptions about what ADHD is and what it means.
Yeah.
So it was actually, I'm a person that likes to know what's happening, and so the diagnosis was really helpful for me, and then I was able to find some strategies and ways to manage work and things like that were helpful for me specifically. And that was really good. So that's sort of my journey with ADHD, and part of it, part of the work that I do in career and experiential learning is it's important for me to take ownership and to disclose that that's part of my identity, part of the way that I work and learn, so that I can effectively do the work that I'm doing as well. So, and ADHD comes along with other invisible difficulties, such as anxiety and depression, especially over time. If you've been diagnosed as an adult, it certainly, over time, you're not really sure why things are all connected, but they all are. They can be all connected one to another. So so it really does inform the work that I do now. To get back to your kind of original question, but it didn't start that way.
Okay. Well, yeah. And I feel like that's kind of how it works sometimes, for sure. But yeah, thank you for sharing about that. Well, and actually it kind of segues into my next question for you, which is tell me, I wanted to ask about your professional pathway. What other careers have led up to this point in time for you? Because I know that one thing we're told a lot as students is you're probably going to change your career multiple times throughout your life, and as a person who can never make up my own mind about what I want to do when I grow up, I'm very interested to hear how you got to where you are.
I got to where I am later in life. So I started off in an administrative assistant in an engineering company, and I worked my way into executive assistant, project management secretary back then roles, and I honestly. It was a really valuable experience for me, because administrative work is actually, I found out, is not my favorite thing to do, nor am I particularly I don't really have a disposition or propensity to do it well. So even going through a number of years doing that work has really, I had to train myself to do something that I wasn't necessarily a natural at. And so now I have those skills to apply to the work that I'm doing now, even though it's really not that related. And then I within that same company, I also was a marketing coordinator there, and worked in the corporate office in downtown. And then I've done a lot of customer service type jobs, and during my social work sort of journey, I worked with lots of different populations and lots of different sorts of contexts, not just employment. So in the hospital, in immigrant services, housing, those kinds of things. And so that's sort of how I ended up here today. And again, I went full circle because I started off in accessible employment and ended up in accessible employment after I don't even know. I think we're at 14 years now. And so it's funny how that, I feel like it's really funny how the universe works in that way. But yeah, ended up at TRU in accessibility services. So I know I'm going to know your next guest, Jeff, well, because we work together. So yeah.
That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So, okay. So I had another question planned for after this, but I actually want to ask you a different one. So not that anybody cares, but about what's on my list. But okay. So I wanted to ask you if you could tell me about a time, or if you could tell us about a time that you had to overcome a challenge, and what did it teach you about yourself? That's a big one.
It is a big one. I mean, a challenge. So life challenges. I certainly feel like I've been through a lot of different experiences. I like to say that, I've been reincarnated a number of times in my life because every time, a big challenge comes up, I seem to grow a little more and turn another chapter. And so what those challenges have taught me, and those are my life challenges, through sort of health issues and relationship experiences and things like that, is that it's taught me that I'm a fighter, and I pursue the things that, and have stepped towards the things that I'm really passionate about. And my experiences inform the work that I do, and in the context in which I do them or do it. And I think that's a really important from a career perspective to really look at how your life experience informs the work that you do, and also what kinds of skills that you have developed by overcoming those challenges and experiences in life. And to really feel confident in your strengths. So when you're going to pursue your career and you're doing your resume and things like that, I always think about how my ability to overcome challenges in my life, how I've approached that from problem solving perspectives and resiliency perspectives and all of those different things, and then I can apply that into the next career that I do. I feel like I'm at my last stop in terms of I can't imagine doing any other work, and I figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I was already a grown up when I figured it out. But I can't imagine doing anything else. So so I think that's what I've learned from overcoming.
I really love how you talk about using your challenges kind of as a strength in a way, and especially when you're like promoting yourself to an employer or circumstances in life. Really, like, resiliency is such an important thing, and to be able to push through. And I also love that you brought up about problem solving, and I actually heard this quote the other day, and I think it's pretty relevant here. I heard it on a podcast I was listening to, and it was one of the CEOs of Spotify who actually said it. And it was like, I'm going to mess it up a little, but it was basically like the value of a business, and in this circumstance, I think we could probably say of the value of like experience even, like, is the sum of all problems solved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. That's a really good quote. And also I would like to add also the sum of problems unsolved, because that is an experience in itself. And sometimes there isn't an answer or a solution, and how are we going to live with things that are beyond our control? So
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad you shared that perspective because that is really important to remember is that sometimes there are things that we have no control over and we just have to figure out how to ride the wave instead of, learning how to build the boat, I
Yeah,
guess. I don't
yeah.
know.
And sometimes we're building the boat, and sometimes we're riding the waves. Depends on where we're at.
Trying to swim and, it's this big one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna take us on a bit of a lighter topic. Do you have any hobbies or side hustles on the go at the moment that you're excited about?
Yeah, every day I'm hustling. Um,
Love it. Was side hustle such a big
I
word right now?
yeah, I don't know if I always have a side. What I'm doing right now, when the pandemic first started and people were, just the mass culture was just starting to begin there. I started making pandemic masks, and part of me thinks about how the heck did I get here making pandemic masks. But in the last year, I kind of randomly started a company, which I didn't plan on starting because there was a demand for the masks, and so I do have a little side hustle as you put it, making masks, and it's been going really well. And I've had to take a little bit of a break from doing lots of production because in my master's program and obviously working and
Ah,
lots of things going on life-wise. So I do have someone to help, but it's fun, and I like doing it because it really grounds me in something creative, and it is something that is relevant and useful for people right now. And I feel like it helps me to feel like I'm doing something to help
yeah.
um, the community. And I'm also pretty artsy and crafty, and so this is a way that I can do that and do it in a short period of time. I can make a mask in 10 or 15 minutes. So yeah, so that's what I have going on. My
That's super
hobbies,
cool.
yeah, my
I might
hobbies
have to
are,
reject you about
yeah,
that.
well, what's happened is, I mean, it's become a bit of a fashion statement. And so I've taken to making a line called Fetch. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a Mean Girls reference.
Yes, yes, I do know that. Yeah.
And stop trying to make fetch happen. And so I started a line that's really fancy and bougie, and it's called the Fetch line, and it's like sequin masks and lace masks and like
Oh my
oversized.
goodness. I
And
totally
with
would love
that,
this to
yeah, because it got there, right? Like it was less about if I have to wear a mask, I'm gonna wear a mask that speaks to me. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I have some custom orders that and I really enjoy. I really enjoy doing that. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you as you were talking a little bit more about your hobbies, but I was just very interested about that.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, were you gonna continue about some hobbies that you have or no?
Oh, yeah, no, that's pretty much what's going on right now. I do like to draw and paint and can really just delve into that sort of thing as well. When I'm feeling ambitious, I might do some hula hooping or something like that.
It's so
So,
cool.
mhm. Or archery. I like archery.
Ooh, yes. Huh, that's cool. Yeah, that's hard. I can't do that very well. I mean, there's one reason, but there's also but I think that, with a beeping target, I could probably figure it out.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but
Hey.
yeah, it is. I feel it's pretty satisfying to hit the bullseye. I'm not gonna lie. So
That's
yeah.
fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna take us back to talking about your role at TRU a bit more, and I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite part about your job?
I think it has a little bit to do with my role in that it is very new. So I've had a lot of opportunities to implement new sort of initiatives, accessibility initiatives, and I am a bit of a kind of a visionary, so to speak. So I really love the creative piece of implementing initiatives that are going to support students, but also the creativity that comes around doing that. So, for example, I facilitated, and I can't take credit for it, but I facilitated the resource recently that's been launched called the Deep Map, and it was developed by a student, and then so it's resources, community resource hub for students. And so that is one of the initiatives, creative ways to support students in a really practical way that I've loved to have the opportunity to do, and the freedom to be able to be those kinds of projects. And so I love that part about my job. I like to see things come to fruition, and for projects to be complete and successful, and I get to do that in this role too as well. And obviously, what my drive is to create opportunities for equitable access to employment for people with barriers. And so, because that's so important to me, I love that aspect of my job, of being able to find ways to make that happen. And also looking at accessibility in a little bit of a different way, and especially now with COVID-19 and a lot of us working and learning in different ways from home, accessibility kind of takes on a different, more of a universal sort of way of presenting itself, because we're all adjusting and working and learning in environments that we might not be used to and may need to adapt our working space and schedules differently than we did when we were working in office spaces. So I think it's a really good move towards the sort of a universal design perspective, and because I'm a proponent for that, it is nice to have an opportunity to be a part of that work.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that concept of universal design. And one of the things that I've heard, accessibility advocates say is accessibility is beneficial for everyone. And whether you have a disability or an exceptionality or you don't, or and so so I just think that's super fascinating.
Yeah, universal design is it's an interesting concept, and there's a lot of tools and technology that already exist for that to use, that a lot of people maybe don't know about as well, that can support everybody, that's accessible to everybody, to use to support them doing their best work. So even if you don't have a diagnosed disability, as you say, I mean, some people just like to have text to speech, like audio, because it's just easier to absorb information that way. It just might be predisposition to the way that learn things, and so the technology is there, and that's universal.
Yeah, that's
things.
Totally.
Yeah, if we can minimize barriers in environmental barriers and situational barriers as much as we can, then we don't have to worry about accommodating in some contexts.
All right. So I'm interested to know what are some of the frequently asked questions that students come to you about, and what are some solutions that you provide or have provided?
I think a couple of things. One of them is disclosure, when to disclose, what to say, and how to ask for supports if needed. And then the other one is around interview skills and feeling, how do I overcome that nervousness and anxiety around interviewing, but even more prominent now is interviewing virtually.
Yeah.
And so those are the two things. Solutions, right now, I am usually doing either one-to-one appointments or appointments in collaboration with a coordinator around these types of things, and just giving some direction around how to approach those situations. So, and every situation is different, so case by case basis is always really important. Who is the employer? What industry is it in? How comfortable are you with disclosure? What is, what kinds of barriers or stigma or discrimination could be associated with disclosing? Like, there's a lot of different pieces, and so the solutions that come up are usually very, very customized to the person.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So. Mm-hmm.
All right. Who is eligible for your support, and how would they get in touch with you?
Well, I suppose anybody's eligible that is looking for career support, accessibility support. If you are a student going through the co-op program, there's a couple of ways that you can access support. So getting in touch with your coordinator and just letting them know that you want to explore accessibility options is a good way, and then your coordinator can get in touch with me and help facilitate that conversation. You can book directly with me if you're not in the co-op program. The best way to do that would be through email. Right now, I'm just sorting out how students can book on Career Connections. But just sort of contacting by email is a good way to get in touch. So those are the two things. Eligibility is, I think it's really a self assessment or self-disclosure kind of thing. We're not looking for medical documentation or anything like that. So definitely if there's some accessibility issues or some questions or concerns, certainly shoot me an email.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's good to know. And I have one more question for you as we draw towards the end of this interview. And this is a question that I'm hoping to ask everyone, but I'm going to try it on you first because you're the first. So can you tell me what accessibility means? And you kind of have throughout the interview, but yeah, I'm just going to ask. I'm going to leave that there. What does accessibility mean to you?
Accessibility for me means a lot of things. I think that language is really important. So when we think about accessibility, we think about oftentimes disability and think about accessibility in that context. What it means to me is kind of from that derivative word access. And to me, access means equity. And that there are intersecting barriers for marginalized populations when it comes to employment and equitable access to employment. And because my identity is intersectional and I live with disability, I'm a woman and I'm a person of color, and bicultural, I can't really take that out of the work that I do, and how one identity informs the other, and how that it makes my experience with employment unique. And so because of that, I kind of think about accessibility in that way of what are the implications for me with all of these identities, in terms of what I might be facing with employment and careers and employers and things like that. So that's really what accessibility means to me. I think that if we're going to really change the way that we see equitable access, we need to redefine what accessibility means. Just to find those commonalities in how people define and experience their physical and mental health. because disability might not be the way in which it is defined for people with different experiences. And so that's important to acknowledge, that if you are a person that has, for example, intergenerational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because of a life experience or community, you, wouldn't necessarily access services as a person with a disability.
Mm.
So in all of those intersectional experiences, as far as from my perspective, and I guess what the research that I'm doing for my master's thesis right now is around the disclosure experiences of post-secondary students disclosing mental health to a potential employer, faculty supervisor, or career practitioner, and looking at those experiences from an intersectional lens, and how people may experience or define mental health or physical health in very different ways depending on culture and all kinds of variables. So accessibility is more complex from my perspective than just disability, but also to acknowledge that we need to center disability as its own community as well, separate from other marginalized communities. So diversity is also an important aspect of it.
I really value your perspective about this because, I often spend a lot of time only focused on the disability side of accessibility, but it's so important to remember that there are a lot more facets to it, and I do agree with you about that, and I'm really grateful for your reminder today, and for your perspective. It's just been really great, and I just want to thank you so much again for this conversation and for the time that you have given to share this with us. And I just want to, I think you might have mentioned it, but how can people contact you?
Just through email is good. You can also email career education, if and they can put you, or frontline staff can put you in touch with me as well. But I think the best way right now is through email or through your coordinator if you're a co-op student, until we can get the Career Connection Simplicity booking thing organized. So that's how you can get in touch, and I'm here to support faculty and employers as well with accessibility, because it's a team effort. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah, no worries. All right, well, thank you so much, and thanks for everybody who tuned in to listen to this, and for those of you who will tune in the future. And that this was Acquiring Access. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.